Hi, I'm Imi. I'm the author of Mapping the Human Mind, a philosophical journey through time, thought and consciousness. I've been reading a chapter of my book each week. This is the ambient music version of Chapter 4, Sacred Spaces, Sound and the Collective Mind, From Stories to Embodied Experience. As myths became encoded in symbol and eventually writing, they underwent another profound transformation. They didn't just remain stories to be told, they became experiences to be lived through ritual and ceremony. Sacred spaces, from Göbekli Tepe to the Hypogeum of Malta, weren't built merely as monuments, but as stages where myths could be enacted, where the boundary between story and reality blurred. This transformation from passive storytelling to active participation marked one of the most powerful shifts in human consciousness. When people gathered in these sacred spaces, performing synchronized movements, chanting ancient words, or witnessing symbolic reenactments of cosmic dramas, they were doing more than remembering. They were imprinting myth into flesh and memory. Modern neuroscience suggests that during shared experiences, human brains can unconsciously synchronize, creating a kind of neural resonance. Our ancestors didn't need to understand brainwaves to intuitively sense the power of moving together, mourning together, and celebrating together. It worked because it bonded them. Symbols that once lived on cave walls took on new life when enacted through ritual. A carved animal or abstract pattern wasn't just looked at, it was danced, sung and remembered through motion. These enactments amplified belief, embedding meaning into movement and memory alike. When early humans gathered around sacred symbols and acted them out in group ceremonies, something chemical happened. Shared rituals triggered the release of oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone, and that rewired the brain to strengthen group bonds. Over time, these collective experiences became more than explanations. They became frameworks through which reality itself was understood and structured. They helped early societies weather hardship, organize complexity, and maintain a sense of shared truth that could stretch across generations. Sound, vibration, and the symbolism of speech. Long before humans carved symbols or wrote words, they used sound as a way to shape the world. Voice was our first technology. Vibration made meaning. Words weren't just for communication, they were power. Spoken incantations could bind oaths, invoke spirits, or shift perception itself. Chanting, humming, and drumming weren't just poetic flourishes, but sacred acts believed to heal, protect, and even alter reality. Many early traditions recognized this power intuitively. In shamanic cultures across Siberia and the Americas, parts of Asia, rhythmic drumming was used to access altered states of consciousness. The beat acted as more than sound, it became a neurological tool, synchronizing brainwaves and allowing shamans to enter trance states and commune with unseen realms. Thousands of years before neuroscience could explain brainwave entrainment, people were already using sound to cross thresholds of awareness. This connection between vibration and consciousness also shaped how sacred spaces were designed. The Hypogeum of Malta, a 5,000-year-old underground temple, has acoustics that some believe were so finely tuned that certain frequencies, especially those in the male vocal range, created powerful resonances. Sound doesn't just echo in these chambers, it envelops. Some researchers believe these vibrations may have altered perception, deepening the spiritual intensity of the rituals that were performed there. In many traditions, sound was the origin. In Hindu cosmology, the syllable Om is considered the vibrational seed of existence itself. To chant it is to attune oneself to the rhythm of the cosmos. This ancient idea resonates with modern physics, where concepts like resonance frequency and harmonic structure are fundamental to how we understand matter and energy. the universe, it seems, hums with the same mystery our ancestors once voiced in song. Sacred centers where heaven meets earth. As humans recognized the power of sound, symbol, and spatial rhythm, they began creating environments designed not just to reflect belief but to amplify it. From early enclosures to monumental temples, sacred centers emerged as places where the visible and invisible could converge, thresholds between realms. And these were more than structures, they were instruments. When people gathered at Göbekli Tepe, they weren't simply stacking stones, they were shaping a shared cosmology in physical form. And this impulse extended far beyond. At Nabta Playa in Egypt, circular stone alignments track the stars and ritual time. These earthbound maps of meaning designed to synchronize the rhythms of nature, community, and cosmos. Across continents, we see the same instinct, to embed belief into place. From the echoing chambers of Newgrange to the perfectly tuned acoustics of Greek amphitheatres, ancient builders crafted spaces that responded to the human voice, amplifying chant, drumming, and breath into something immersive and transformative. These effects were engineered with precision and purpose. In many ways, these sacred centres evolved from the same impulse we see in early burial practices and cave sanctuaries, the desire to give tangible form to belief. Where ochre-marked burials and spiral-carved stones hinted at symbolic awareness, these later sites became fully immersive expressions of ritual architecture, their purpose not only visual but visceral. These centres were more than monuments, they became containers for consciousness, ritual machines tuned to evoke awe, synchronize attention, and align the inner and outer worlds through meaning. In their alignment, symmetry, and resonance, they gave form to the formlessness. They stitched together sky and soil, spirit and structure into one continuous thread of experience. Totemism and hybrid beings. For as long as humans have inscribed meaning, they've merged human and animal forms, blurring the boundary between species, between reality and myth. This practice, known as totemism, reflects one of the earliest spiritual frameworks, where animals weren't simply prey or predators, but spiritual guides, kin, and even deities. Totemism went beyond symbolic representation, it structured ritual and shaped society. Shamans invoked animal spirits in ceremonies, wearing masks and mimicking their movements to embody their powers. Tribal groups saw themselves as descendants of sacred animals, organizing their entire social structure around these totemic relationships. The earliest temples were adorned with hybrid beings that blurred the line between humanity and divinity, serving as constant reminders of the permeable boundary between worlds. One of the oldest known examples is the Lauermensch figurine, a 40,000-year-old ivory sculpture found in Germany. This half-lion, half-human statue suggests that early humans saw themselves as deeply connected to the animal world, perhaps even believing they could take on its power or wisdom. It served a deeper purpose than simply aesthetics, likely anchoring key ritual acts designed to forge connections with the spirit world. The manifestation of these hybrid beings varied across cultures but revealed the common understanding of animals as divine intercessors. In ancient Egypt, deities like Anubis with his jackal head guarding the dead and Thoth with his ibis wisdom were central figures to the elaborate ritual systems governing Egyptian life. The connection runs equally deep in indigenous traditions across continents, where Native American and Siberian shamanic cultures developed intricate relationships with spirit animals believed to guide individuals through life and beyond death. Their vision quests and initiation ceremonies were specifically designed to help people forge bonds with these totemic guardians. Even Greek mythology, often seen as more humanistic, embraced hybrid beings like centaurs, and the bull-headed Minotaur to represent forces both divine and chaotic, creatures who populated not just their stories, but their mystery cults and ritual practices. These hybrid beings reflected a worldview where the sacred and the natural world were deeply intertwined. Totemism involved more than just the worship of animals. It expressed a belief in shared consciousness between humans and the living world, a sense that we were never truly separate from nature. This deep connection between humans, animals, and the unseen world gave rise to powerful symbolic figures that evolved into recurring characters in myths across cultures, the seeds of what would become universal archetypes. Archetypes in mythology, patterns older than time. As ritual systems evolved, the totemic figures and hybrid beings of early belief systems developed into more complex archetypal forces that emerged from the collective human experience, shaping not just stories but the very structure of ritual ceremonies. Throughout history, the same recurring characters, the wise old sage, the cunning trickster, the nurturing mother, and the hero on a journey, appear in mythologies from every corner of the world. These universal patterns suggest they are deeply embedded in the way humans understand themselves and the world around them. The hero, the one who endures the journey. From Gilgamesh to Hercules, King Arthur to the Buddha, nearly every civilization tells of a hero who embarks on a perilous journey, faces trials, and returns transformed. Across cultures, the structure is consistent. The hero is called to adventure, often by fate or prophecy, confronts challenges that test their resolve, and descends into darkness, symbolizing death or transformation, and emerges reborn. But the hero wasn't just a character in stories, they were embodied in ritual. Initiation ceremonies around the world mirrored this journey, putting participants through symbolic death and rebirth. From vision quest to baptism to even modern-day fraternity hazings, however diluted, we still enact versions of the hero's path to mark transformation. The trickster, chaos and transformation. The trickster is the unpredictable force that disrupts order and reveals hidden truths. Whether it's Loki from Norse mythology, Anansi the African spider god, or Coyote from Native American traditions, these figures challenge the status quo, forcing transformation through deception, humour, and cunning. Tricksters aren't easily categorised as good or evil. They dwell in liminal spaces, navigating the boundaries between creation and destruction, insight and absurdity, and in doing so, they remind us that chaos is not the opposite of order, it's a necessary counterforce. Without disruption, there can be no change. In ritual contexts, trickster figures often appear as masked performers who broke taboos, inverted norms, or spoke uncomfortable truths. Think of medieval Europe's Feast of Fools, where a peasant was crowned king for a day, or the sacred clowns of Native American ceremonies who mocked authority and subverted solemnity. These ritual inversions acted as pressure valves for social tension, allowing space for contradiction, absurdity, and renewal. Even sacred traditions need shaking up now and then, and the trickster is the figure who dares to do it. The Great Mother, creation, nurturing, and destruction. The archetype of the Great Mother embodies the dual forces of life and death, creation, and destruction. From the Egyptian Isis to the Greek Gaia and Hindu Kali, this figure is both protector and destroyer, nurturing life while wielding the power to bring it to an end. The Great Mother often appears in times of transformation, whether as the fertile earth that sustains humanity, the divine mother who births gods, or the terrifying force that clears the way for renewal. This duality is crucial. Creation cannot exist without destruction, and birth is always linked to eventual death. Rituals centered around the Great Mother archetype typically followed seasonal cycles, celebrating birth in spring, abundance in summer, sacrifice in autumn, and dormancy in winter. Agricultural festivals, fertility rites, and ceremonies marking life's transitions, birth, puberty, marriage, and death, all drew on the symbolic power of the Great Mother. Even today, the emotional resonance of Mother's Day, or the nearly universal tendency to refer to our planet as Mother Earth, reveals how deeply this archetype remains embedded in our collective psyche. The shaman, guide, keeper of knowledge. This figure serves as the gatekeeper between worlds, the bridge between the seen and the unseen, the known and the mysterious. In mythology, the shaman or guide is the one who understands hidden truths and helps the hero along their journey. Merlin from Arthurian legend, Hermes as the Greek psychopomp, and Odin in his wandering wisdom-seeking form all embody this archetype. In many cultures, shamans were revered as those who could commune with spirits, heal the sick, and reveal sacred knowledge. Whether depicted as an old sage, a wise woman, or an enigmatic traveller, these figures represent the quest for wisdom and the idea that knowledge must often be sought in the most unexpected places. In ritual contexts, this archetype manifested as the priest, medicine person, or ritual specialist, those who had undergone special training to meditate between the community and the divine. They interpreted omens, performed healing ceremonies, and guided initiates through sacred mysteries. The respect and sometimes fear we still feel towards spiritual leaders, teachers, and mentors echoes this ancient recognition of the guide's power to transform consciousness. Why these patterns endure? Archetypes persist not simply as characters in myth, but as deep-rooted structures in the human mind. Neuroscience suggests that our brains are especially responsive to these figures. They activate emotional centers, spark memory formation, and anchor meaning in lived experience. These aren't just psychological tropes, they're neural pathways shaped by millennia of shared stories and rituals. So we don't just witness the hero's struggle, we live it. We laugh with the trickster, grieve with the mentor, and recognise ourselves in these recurring roles. Far from relics, archetypes remain the emotional scaffolding of how we understand change, challenge, and connection. They are not echoes of the past, but the living patterns through which we continue to make sense of the world. The symbolic systems that emerged in our ancient past didn't disappear with modernisation. They evolved and adapted, continuing to shape human experience in ways both obvious and subtle. These early symbols and shared stories still surface in our dreams, shape our art, and influence how we make sense of the world. From animal mascots for sports teams to corporate logos used in sacred geometry, from social media influencers to online subcultures creating modern mythologies, the underlying pattern remains. Humans are meaning-making machines, constantly weaving individual experiences into collective stories that shape how we understand reality itself. The bridge to systematic thought. The development of collective ritual and symbolic thinking laid the groundwork for more structured ways of understanding the world. What began as embodied meaning in ritual gradually nurtured a capacity for abstraction. Sacred spaces became centres not just for devotion, but of pattern recognition. The regularities observed in ceremony, its alignment with celestial cycles, the outcomes linked to repeated acts, encouraged early forms of causal reasoning. Over time, the human mind that connected stars with seasons and rituals with harvests was beginning to grasp broader principles beneath the surface of experience. Eventually, belief itself became a subject of inquiry. In ancient Athens, this shift crystallized. Within view of temples built to honour the gods, thinkers began to ask new questions, not about divine will, but about logic, ethics, and the structure of reality. Myth was no longer the only lens through which to understand the world. Reason had entered the conversation. And this wasn't a rejection of the sacred, but an evolution of human thought. The same cognitive tools that once crafted myths and rituals were now used to build philosophical systems. The search for meaning had moved inward, from symbolic performance to abstract exploration. This shift from mythic consciousness to systematic thought marks one of humanity's most profound transformations. When belief met reason, a new worldview emerged, one that would shape science, ethics, governance, and the architecture of knowledge itself. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Narrative.